Well,
Okay, let me just
oh,
introduce you. Yeah, so
sorry.
hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Carney with Coldmaker, Maker. And I decided about 2 years ago to start doing these presentations for folks to help people learn more about the important things. So estate planning, I have another person I partner with for like mortgages, and then I have someone else I partner with for like reverse mortgages and how to unlock your equity. But tonight, I'm excited to have Stacy here. So she does estate planning and also with special needs situations as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Stacy. And what's going to happen is she's going to go through her presentation. And at the end, I've got a really short, just kind of market update and kind of talk to you about what the market's doing. Stacy?
Right. Well, this is a cozy group. So I think what I might do is instead of, I'm trying to get this chair to the table, but there's all kinds of cords. Okay. Um, all right. So let me see here. So I just want the ability. We're going to just skip through that. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about me and my background just to kind of give you some sense of why I'm talking about any of this at all. And then mostly it won't be about me. Um, so I've been practicing in Marin County for 20 years. I started my own practice in 2009, and I've always been doing estate planning and special needs law. Uh, but over time, how I see what my practice is for, um, and uh, what tools I want to use in it has really changed. And one of the things that um, created kind of the biggest shift in my perspective was in 2018. All of the muscles in my body just kind of stopped working. And I stopped having the ability to move the muscles in my face. So I couldn't talk to anybody, or if I was able to, it was just excruciating. And nobody could quite figure out what was going on. And I ended up having to close my practice for like 3 years. We did figure out what was going on, and I was able to kind of train my brain out of it. So I'm totally healthy um, and kind of better for that experience. But I lost the ability to connect with other people in any way. I couldn't have just a simple conversation. Hi, how you doing? I couldn't schedule my own appointments or I had to type anything I wanted to say. Um, and so like during that time, I kind of lost two things. I lost the ability to connect with other humans, and financially, my life got really small because I wasn't working and kind of blowing through my retirement savings. I have a son who's in private school, kind of finishing that up. And when I got better and I was able to have both of those things again, it was really interesting. I didn't miss the stuff at all. In fact, this experience totally changed my relationship with stuff. But I really desperately missed the human interaction. And it just gave me great clarity around kind of why I believe we're all here on this planet as humans. And it's really, I think, because we belong to each other. It's the relationships we have with other people uh, that are the source of any kind of healing that happens in this world, any kind of change that happens for the better. It all starts with us figuring out how to have meaningful connection with each other. And so, um, as I was kind of figuring out, what do I want to do now? Do I want to go back to practicing law? Do I want to do something else? Um, I started thinking, well, actually, estate planning is actually maybe a really good way to operate in service of that goal of being part of helping people connect with each other and do it well and keep their family relationships through difficult challenges. And so that's kind of why I'm like here now really talking about this stuff. And it's really, really changed the way I think about the tools we have in our toolkit when we're doing estate planning. So, wait, but it's not moving. So what am I doing?
Oh, I might have, I touched something.
Okay. Oh, do I just need to touch the screen? I'm not using the stuff. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So, I think that there are kind of macro and micro goals to estate planning. The macro goals of estate planning are, I think, twofold. It's making,
It should be record, the microphone is off. Stacy.
right, but we have another one on. So my computer is off.
This
Yeah.
one's off.
Yeah,
That one's
we've
off.
got it. Yeah, thank you. So anyway, so the goals of the macro kind of overarching goals of estate planning for a client are kind of twofold. One, our goal is to make sure that during a time of illness, my client who's putting together this plan gets the best life possible, has the most satisfying, comfortable life possible. And that is measured subjectively as opposed to using something like blood pressure to determine whether somebody is having a good life. There's some really interesting palliative care research that talks about that when when people's quality of life is measured using subjective markers, uh, as opposed to more objective testing or ideas of what's good or not good, they live longer, they report more satisfaction in their lives. But the other goal, so quality of life is one of the goals. The other goal, I think, macro goal is preserving relationships, family relationships, whether that's biological family or your family of choice, but preserving your relationships as you may navigate illness or when you die, preserving the relationships of your family members with each other. And treating that like having us as estate planning attorneys really start to talk about that as an asset in the estate and maybe the most important asset. So I think those are the kind of two higher level goals. And then in estate planning, we have a bunch of kind of micro goals. One of them, a huge one, a part of estate planning is incapacity planning. So it's talking about who is going to take over decision making for you with regard to your assets and your finances, with regard to your healthcare decision making, but really with regard to all of the little things you do in your life that require a decision, from bill pay to how we're going to invest these assets to what kind of treatment am I going to have for this illness. So that's definitely one of them, thinking very carefully and intentionally about who that person is and what are we looking for in a good surrogate decision maker. So that's a huge piece of planning. Tax efficiency is a term that you hear a lot in the estate planning world, and that just means we want to do what we can over the course of your life and when you transfer assets to people at death to minimize or eliminate exposure to different kinds of taxes. So estate and gift tax, capital gains tax, income tax, property tax. So we talk about that in planning as part of it. Another goal usually is making sure that however we set things up for transitioning decision-making power, we do so in a way where a court does not need to oversee that. Because in most circumstances, court fees are expensive. Ongoing court oversight is tedious and expensive. And so we try to avoid that. And so we're either usually talking in terms of conservatorship as the court process for when somebody becomes incapacitated, or probate is the process for a court overseeing the closure of someone's estate after they've died. But we're also sometimes planning for young people who might inherit as beneficiaries. We need to do that really carefully because we never want somebody under the age of 18 inheriting an asset. It creates, if they do, even if they have a legal guardian living, we still have to have normally have to have a different guardian appointed for that specific asset. And we often want to plan for even when somebody reaches the age of majority, which in California is 18, we want to plan for, well, like with my son is lovely. He's 25, but there's no way if I were to die tomorrow that I want him to just get all of my estate at once and being in charge of managing that. He's not ready for that yet. So there's all different kinds of creative ways we can talk about how to support a young person with an inheritance. And then a huge part of what I do in my practice has to do with how we leave assets to somebody who is disabled, um, uh, and or receiving means tested government benefits like SSI or Medi-Cal or Section 8 housing. We want to make sure that if we leave someone an inheritance, we don't give it to them outright if they're on those things. We can do all kinds of planning to make sure they can still benefit, but do it in a way that they don't lose their government benefits. And then as far as transferring wealth when you die, one of the goals is making sure that for my clients, we're talking about like, what do you want that money to do after you're gone? What are the goals for that money? Regardless of who you're leaving it to, like, what do you want that to achieve? All right. And then because we're talking about family dynamics tonight, like what are the consequences of no planning or planning that maybe uh, is incomplete, as I would define incomplete? And I think the major consequences are conflict, and sometimes that results in huge financial costs, in litigation, and there are definitely emotional costs. You know, this can mean, unfortunately, if siblings aren't talking, it can mean that their kids don't talk. It can mean that, like, after you die, your grandkids don't talk to each other. Um, and the other thing that I've noticed anecdotally in my practice is that um, when I, as the person creating the estate plan, am not explaining what my actions to my family while I'm well, when I'm not explaining the why behind what I've chosen to do in my estate plan. Like for example, let's say I choose to give more of my estate to a child with special needs in their special needs trust and less to my other child. And I don't explain why. And the answer might seem obvious to me, but it isn't always obvious to your children or your loved ones, especially if they have their own insecurities or there's been tension in your relationship with them in the past. And so even if my intention was not to shortchange the child who gets less or to send the message that I loved them less or am angry at them, that's sometimes how it can read, because I think that all of us, we're all kind of walking around trying to just deal with our own minds, you know, like that is like the challenge in our lives really, is like to deal with ourselves. And so sometimes logic doesn't always come into play. And what I've seen is kids not understanding why something has happened, and then deciding, you know, like we tend to kind of think of the worst case scenario. Oh, my mother must have hated me. And then that's kind of the story that kind of builds roots in their brain, and then that colors their memories of everything that happened. And it's so unfortunate because even if mom did it because she was really angry, it would be so much better if they could work it out and talk about it while mom was alive. Um, so so that I think is a great consequence of a failure to really plan well. And so when I talk to my clients about what a good estate plan includes, I kind of break it down and say that a good estate plan has both kind of formal planning tools or hard planning tools and informal or soft planning tools. So it's a combination of more formal planning tools, and those are the different contracts we might include in a plan that legally hand over decision-making power at certain points in the plan creator's life, or talk about who's going to inherit what and how when that person dies. And so those are the legal contracts we use that establish powers and rights, but they don't talk about if I'm appointing my son as trustee of my trust, so the legal decision maker for my trust, they don't talk about, well, how is he going to do that? It just talks about the breadth of his power, not how he's actually going to administer that estate on my behalf. Okay, I'm going to skip that. I'm not going to talk in this presentation a lot about how the estate planning documents and an estate plan work in this presentation. So I'm going to skip that piece and just start to talk about what are the informal planning tools that I think are equally as important as the contracts you sign. And I think it's having a strong community around you for a number of different reasons. It's not just because, I mean, there's all of this really great research that talks about having meaningful, strong connections in your life is the best predictor of how long you're going to live. But also because if you have people who are paying attention to what you do and what your habits are, those people are going to notice when your habits change. So if you develop some kind of cognitive impairment and you stop cleaning your house, if you don't really interact with people on a regular basis and nobody's coming over to your house, then there might be a longer period of time where you have this cognitive impairment and are not getting your needs met because nobody is noticing. And so you can have great estate planning documents that talk about who takes over if you develop some kind of disease that causes cognitive impairment or illness. But for those people to take over, they have to know that it's time. And so having a community around you that is paying attention to what you do is important. And it doesn't have to be a huge community. It can be one or two people. But it's the quality of those relationships and the depth of those relationships that I think matters. I think that for you to have a plan that serves kind of that macro goal of having the best quality of life possible during a time of illness, or making sure that your legacy after you die serves the purposes you want it to serve. I think that you have to have an understanding for yourself of what your core values are. So in my practice, we actually, there's this woman named Brene Brown, and she's well known to some people, and some people don't know who she is, but she is maybe my hero. And she's a researcher first and a teacher second. And she does all of this amazing research about human emotion and language and how the two interplay. Um, and I borrow a lot from her. She's got these great value setting exercises that are pretty straightforward and simple and not that time consuming, but really effective. And so I've started using that in my practice. Um, so if we can understand when we're putting together a plan, what are my like 2 to 3 kind of core values that I lean into when I'm making difficult decisions, and then communicate that and how that might play out at a more granular level as things happen over time and I get sick, um, to our surrogate decision makers and the people who are going to be around me. The more those people understand that, the more we create kind of a prism through which our trustees and agents for healthcare should be looking when they're making decisions, the more likely it is that you're going to have a good quality of life according to your definition. And so I have started in the last couple of years having clients do what I'm calling a charter of values. It's not a legally binding document, but it is a document that talks kind of in detail about if honesty and humor are my 2 core values, then this is how I see those playing out during various difficult or challenging situations, whether it's related to illness or family dynamics or having to make a decision between using how to use limited resources, the better. It is, I think, uh, great for you. It's also great if your kids are the ones making the decisions. The more they know about how to make decisions for you, the better it is for them emotionally. It is a great burden to have to make a major life decision for someone, but not feel like you know with clarity how they'd want to do it. And so this is kind of right now one of the ways that I'm hoping to help make sure client goals are honored. Um, I think a huge part, a huge an important tool in your informal planning toolkit is being able to make an honest assessment of where your relationships stand, of your different family members' abilities, needs, motivations. Because I will often have parents come in to set up an estate plan. They have adult children, and they decide when we're talking about who's going to be my surrogate decision maker, that they're just going to name their kids in order of age, even though son number one, who's first in line, he's really terrible with money. He's had a lot of creditor and bankruptcy issues in his life. And we don't really trust that he's going to do a good job, but we don't want to hurt his feelings. Um, uh, and so we're going to appoint him first. And though you put off a difficult conversation in the short term, in the long term, that doesn't do anybody any good. It ends up, for the son who has to serve his parents, even if he wants to do a good job, this isn't really in his wheelhouse, and so he feels bad if he's falling short. He has to deal with his siblings who don't like what he's doing, and it may be creating a wedge between them. His parents aren't getting their needs met, and so if you want to preserve your relationships with your family, if you want a good quality of life during a time of illness, sitting down and honestly assessing what everybody is capable of is imperative. And it doesn't mean we're judging whether somebody is good or bad. That's not what this is about. There's no shame in not being financially organized. It just means maybe trustee isn't the best job for you. And so that is part of like what I talk to with my clients when we're planning. Um, Another piece is family meetings. I have started with all my clients when we set up estate plans, usually after the plan has been put in place, having a meeting with the people who are going to be making legal decisions, the surrogate decision makers, uh, and the beneficiaries, anybody who's going to be at, kind of around when you're dying. Usually it's the kids. Have them all in the room together, and we have a meeting where we set expectations. Um, I mean, most conflict really comes from unmet expectations. Uh, and so I think the more we can do to set expectations and explain the why behind decisions, now, and then manage maybe someone being upset, and walking through that. That's a gift you give your child. Being willing to show up and have a difficult conversation and walk through figuring it out tells that child you think they can handle it, uh, and tells that child that you think they're worth figuring it out. And it means that there's real honesty in uh, uh, the plan you're putting in place. And so that's kind of the last piece. Understanding before you have the difficult conversations, how to have them so that um, it doesn't turn into conflict. It turns into connection. Okay. Now, I will say, I'm certainly not a therapist, and I don't pretend to be a therapist in any of our meetings. Um, and so I'm just kind of sharing what I think so far, what I'm doing in my practice. Um, but I think part of an honest assessment of where relationships stand, of who's capable of what, means I need to help my clients kind of reality test some assumptions they have that are really common. And this is something that's happened with my parents. Um, a lot of people that come in and they say, everybody's going to want what's fair. Uh, uh, it would be too painful for everyone to talk about the truth. I need to protect my family from the truth. They can't handle it. Or this one comes from my family, from my parents. Stacy and Jeff will heal their relationship because they're forced to be co-trustees together. Right? Or I'm not going to worry about it. I'll be dead. It's their problem. So this just like none of this stuff is necessarily true. And so it's kind of important to talk about. Wait a minute. So another piece of an honest assessment is really understanding for yourself what's involved. If we're going to appoint our oldest son as successor trustee of our trust, I need to be able to communicate to him what that entails. So I usually have my clients, like I've actually put something together in writing that I have my clients give anybody who wants to act in this role. And then we also have this family meeting where we talk more in depth about, hey, this is what you should expect your role will look like. Before we communicate to any candidate that we're thinking about, that we want them to act, really seriously and honestly looking at, does this child or does this person have the skill set necessary to do this job? And again, it is not a value judgment. It is just about are they the right candidate for what we need to do? And trustee administration is complicated. It is complicated when it's not your money. I mean, even if you have a really informal relationship with your children, um, uh, in your normal life, the minute they have a legal responsibility to manage your money, the law confers upon them, regardless of the whether we're doing a trust or it's just pursuant to a power of attorney, regardless of the tool we're using, the contract we're using, the law confers upon them this high level of fiduciary duty. And there are consequences legally for trustees who don't do their jobs. And so it is really important to understand what this role entails and make sure that anybody who agrees to do it, they understand it too. And the other thing I'll add that's not on here too, that I think is important, in your estate plan, I think it's really important if you're going to name lay people as your successor decision makers, to make sure that there's an alternative that's viable. If your son can't do it, I think it's really important when they agree to do it, they know, hey, if when the time comes, I've got my own illness to deal with, or I've got whatever, for whatever reason, I can't do it. It's okay to say no, because we have a meaningful backup plan in place. And that backup plan can include another layperson. It can include a professional, which many times I think is a really good idea. We can allow people we trust to choose a professional trustee at the time. There are all kinds of ways we can get creative around this, but it's really important that your lay people, surrogate decision makers, have an out and know that it's okay to take it. Because one of the worst things is having a kid who doesn't have the bandwidth in their life, trying to do this job. Again, like that explodes upon everybody. It doesn't work out well, and it's hugely stressful for everybody involved. And so a way to avoid that is making sure there is a backup plan in place. Okay. So I've been talking a lot about, okay, meaningful connection. It's really important. That's what we should all do. So what do I mean by that? And here's where I'm really borrowing heavily from Brene Brown. I just love, she wrote this book called Atlas of the Heart. And I love, it's a great book, and she really breaks down our language and what terms related to emotion mean. And she defines meaningful connection in a way that really resonates with me. And so it's this idea that we're trying to protect this energy that exists between two people, when they feel seen, heard, valued, when they can give and receive information without judgment, and when they become stronger because of the relationship. So that's what I think everybody should be shooting for. And then she talks about, okay, well, if that's the goal, there are really the research shows there are really kind of three things that need to exist between these two people for that meaningful connection to happen. And she calls them grounded confidence, the courage to walk alongside, and story stewardship. And so grounded confidence really means, for me to show up well in relationships with other people, I need to be showing up first for myself. I need to unpack my emotional baggage. I need to be able to be vulnerable and feel confident with all facets of myself, even the ones that I think other people might judge me for. It's getting really okay with yourself, doing that work. Um, and people who are really grounded in that way, I think, are people that are good listeners, are people who don't need to posture and be right and talk over. So they're able, for that reason, I think, to kind of meet the other prerequisites she talks about. And so the courage to walk alongside, I really think what she means by this is when you're in a relationship with another person, and that person is going through something, it's feeling so okay with myself that I don't need to create some kind of separation between myself and that person. And that sometimes happens when you pity somebody. There's an interesting difference between pity and sympathy, right? Pity is saying to somebody, oh my gosh, I feel so sorry for those people, you know, like, you know, but that would never happen to me, right? It's feeling sorry for somebody. It's saying that we're somehow different. Sympathy is the idea that you are just bearing witness. You're walking alongside someone. You're hearing their story. You're observing their pain, and you're not looking away. Um, you aren't trying to tell them how to fix it. Uh, but you're asking them questions about how they think they're going to fix it. So you're not trying to steer them or solve problems. You're just there to bear witness. You're there to to walk alongside this person, and to do that, to be able to practice that kind of empathy, and um, uh, you you need to be able to know what you need and set boundaries, um and so that's another piece of what needs to be there for meaningful connection to happen. And then she says the third thing is something called story stewardship. So it's this idea that uh when somebody, there's like kind of two components, and I'm going to talk about the second one first. When somebody is sharing their story, you are going to believe them. You are going to believe that what they say happened is their experience, even if everything in your life tells you that can't possibly have happened. You are going to believe that that is what they believe, uh, and give them the benefit of the doubt. And then the other piece is being willing to share your story in a vulnerable way, uh, but carefully choosing who you share it with, right? Like, get vulnerable, but share it with people you have meaningful connection with, who are going to be good stewards of your story. And so I talk about this just because um, the more we know about what needs to be there before we can have meaningful connection, uh, the more awareness we can have around what isn't there. So for example, like my brother and my brother, I almost want to start crying about it. Like, my brother just won't talk to me. And it is deeply painful and makes me so sad. And I don't really understand why. And um and I like totally lost my train of thought. It was yeah, I'm sorry guys.
You were talking about the story and walking beside and being
Uh,
a steward of the story.
I was, but I can't remember why I was sharing that with you. Hmm. Oh, I know why. I know why. Okay. So, uh, having awareness of where you're at with somebody, or where your kids are at with each other, is one of these things, one of these elements missing in my relationship with my brother. My brother is not willing to bear witness for me without judging me, for sure. And probably, like, I don't know how capable I would be able to I don't know how capable I would be of doing that for him. I don't know. Um, and so my parents created this estate plan when they moved to Arizona, where we're co-trustees of a trust. And I think we should have a private fiduciary. And so ultimately that's what's going to happen. Like, but having awareness of where your kids stand or where your family stands and understanding like kind of, I think this helps you like people to understand what needs to be there before you can put your family members in positions where they have to deal with each other in really challenging circumstances. Okay. I think I might have done something bad. I just pressed on it, but maybe.
Oh, you paused it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's do this
I
again.
broke it.
You broke it. Let me
Sorry.
just take me 1 second. Sorry.
What did I do?
Sure. I don't know. I got it right here.
Okay. Yeah, there it is.
I don't- Yeah, you're further in there.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, yay. So now how do I change the page? Because
I think you can just click.
so now that works. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm not going to go through this stuff, but this really breaks down in kind of more granular detail what she means by those three components. But are we giving people this handout?
We can, yes.
Okay. So anybody who wants the handout, you can have it, and that's in here. Okay. Yeah, so that's more of that. Okay, so I'm going to kind of move on and talk about family meetings and how we design them. So we're having family meetings to set expectations, to help have difficult conversations if we need to have them, and kind of create a good container for that. And so one of the first questions I ask my clients, kind of while we're in the estate planning process, before we've, come to final documents, is what kind of family meeting do you want to have? Do you want to have an information only meeting where we talk about, okay, this is what the plan is made up of, this is what you can expect, this is what your role will entail. Any questions about that? Here's the intention behind this. So information only, or do you want to have a more collaborative meeting where we're actually asking the kids, what do they think about these provisions around successor trustees? And most of the meetings we end up having are information only. There are kind of pros and cons to each. I think the risk that we run with a more collaborative meeting around just the estate planning documents themselves is that we just go down a rabbit hole of disagreement, that we create more challenging dynamics than we avoid. And so the pro of a collaborative approach is that when people feel like they've been involved in creating the outcome or the plan, they have a sense of agency and they sometimes have more buy-in to how it's going to ultimately work. But this is like something we think about really carefully. Again, really trying to have an honest assessment of kind of where everybody stands. Okay, yes. Okay, so design questions that I kind of walk through with clients. Who are we going to invite to this family meeting? Are we inviting spouses? Are we inviting your kids, stepkids? What are likely sources of conflict? What are the things you can think of that might end up in connection that isn't helpful in this meeting? What's the best timing for it? If one of your kids is a CPA, probably doing this during tax season isn't a good idea. He's going to be really stressed out. He's not going to have much emotional bandwidth to lend towards this meeting. So trying to, within reason, pick a time that is least stressful for everybody. Do we need to have this in person or do we want to have this via Zoom? I'm a real in-person gal. I think that in-person usually is the best choice, but sometimes people need the buffer of a Zoom call. Especially in circumstances where uh, uh, maybe one person is not comfortable with feeling safe around the other person, even if that person has never really actually done anything that would cause them to feel unsafe, right? So it doesn't really matter. So sometimes Zoom provides a buffer that is helpful. Often, though, in person is best. What processes are we going to use to make decisions? What are your fears about this meeting? Let's talk about that and kind of reality check some of your fears. And do you need support in having these conversations? Because I think they are conversations that need to be had, but sometimes it might make sense to have a mediator in the room, a neutral third party who is good at is supporting families and coming to some kind of solution. And a good mediator doesn't come up with the solutions. They are like a referee who creates kind of the rules that everybody's going to follow in having the meeting. They create a safe container. Okay. And then once we kind of decided on that stuff, coming to the meeting with an agenda is really important. So what are the areas we're going to discuss? What is the extent or the level at which you want to disclose information? That's really important for me to know and for everybody to kind of be clear on before we start. What are some of the boundaries that we're not going to cross that we can express to the people in the group if needed? Who's going to lead the conversation? Is it going to be me? Is it going to be one of my clients? Is it going to be a mediator? Should we break this up into smaller meetings and have a number of them? Should we just have a really long meeting or maybe two really long meetings? So kind of all stuff we're thinking about. Okay. This is something that when I'm having a family meeting, I send out to everybody who's going to participate and everybody signs off on this. These are the ground rules for having a meeting with me in my office. So I like the idea that we are all on the same team. We don't sit on opposite sides of the room. We sit near each other, and the problem is the thing that is in front of us. We're on the same team. We have a common problem that we need to solve. All feelings, including anger, are okay, but cruelty is not. And cruelty comes in really explicit forms, but it also can be more subtle. So it can be raising your voice and name calling, but it can also be putting walls up and shutting down. It can be silence. It can be eye rolling. It can be sarcasm, double meaning to what you're saying, which leads to kind of my third rule, which is talk about what you are really feeling. Don't make anybody try to guess what that is. Be direct and clear. Clear is kind. This is Brene Brown, not me, who made this up, but I love it. Clear is kind. Unclear is unkind. Number 4, I think, is really big and also really hard to do, but listen with the same passion you have about being heard. So when you're listening, try not to make judgments or conclusions. Instead, come up with questions that you want to ask as a follow-up. Uh, own your own story, own your mistakes. You can never over apologize, but you can certainly under apologize. The vault is sacred, meaning if somebody is really vulnerable in our meeting, you don't get to use that against them later. And it's confidential. No judgment. Everybody in this room gets to ask for what they need without being judged. Assume generosity. So it means give the other people the most generous interpretation as far as motivations are concerned. Assume that they are coming from a place of vulnerability and good intentions. Don't be too quick to try to figure it out, because figuring it out, it seems neater, right? Like, I think we are all creatures that like neat categories and patterns, but life is really messy. So be a little uncomfortable, stay in it for a while, and like give it the time it needs. I think try to be as clear as possible about your boundaries and respect others' stated boundaries. Anyone can call a timeout at any point. So, like, being cruel is yelling at somebody, but it's always okay to, without saying anything, walk out of the room. Sometimes, when we're emotionally flooded, we cannot think logically, physiologically not possible. And so sometimes all it takes is 5 minutes out of the room to cool your brain down. So working on having awareness about when you're flooded and getting out. And everybody belongs here. Everybody belongs here. Yeah. So everybody is valued in this family and everybody belongs at the table. Okay, I'm almost done. And then just things that are important to talk about in the meeting. I've already said, it's like letting people know what their roles are going to be, talking about how the assets are going to be divided when you die, the why and how of decision making. What's the process look like, and why? And I think in that meeting, getting clear on what if it's kids sitting around you, what are their concerns? What are their wishes? What are their expectations? And there's something really powerful about having all the kids in the room together, hearing all this information and seeing each other hear it. I think that's if that can be done, really powerful. And then I think the way to keep things from turning into conflict and steering it more towards conversation is just slowing down. Slow it down. You can never, well, maybe you can go too slow, but slower is always better. Strive to understand. Ask more questions, avoid conclusions. And then like the step 3 is problem solving. So slowing down. If things are getting flooded, take a break, slow down. Try to understand, why did he leave the room? You don't know why he left the room. So like you're probably making 100 assumptions, but you don't know why he left the room. So let's try to understand what just happened in a compassionate way. And then let's solve for that. That serves everybody's interests. Okay. These are just people, these are researchers and thinkers in this area whom I like and respect and trust. Goodbye. Thank you. The end.
Anybody have questions?
Thanks for sitting through that. Figuring out how to communicate this is kind of a new process for me. Like we attorneys don't get up here and talk about this stuff a whole lot. And so I really thank you for being my guinea pigs because I want to talk about it and I'm not quite sure how much information is too much or what is valuable. So thank you all, for being here late at night.
Yeah. No questions? No?
Well, I don't know, questions, but, this is, not profound or unique at all, but in my own family of origin, every rule was violated.
Hmm.
Everyone,
Mhm.
my parents kept it a secret, so my sister and I were shocked, and,
Yeah.
it created tremendous animosity between my sister and I and our brother who got everything, and, so I know what happens, and most people probably know what happens when it's not
Yeah.
working or when it didn't work.
Mhm.
Um, and so I appreciate the fact that you and maybe other people are working to make inroads into that um, situation, I guess, because everyone's going through it. I mean, we're all gonna die.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I have no children and I have no spouse, and so things are a little different for me. I have a family, kind of. But there's just been a huge implosion within that family
Mm.
that I already have an estate plan. But I need to, I need to erase it. I need to totally revise it
Mm.
because of what happened in that mess. And so, things, I guess part of where I'm at with this is just the, need for whatever my estate plan is and is going to be to build in some fluidity, because you never know
Mhm.
what's gonna happen in
Yeah.
your family.
Yeah.
I thought I had it all nailed down, but I don't.
Well, and I think that's like actually with estate plans, it is actually a good idea to when we're putting together an estate plan, the goal is to make it flexible so that it serves your interests for as long as possible. But circumstances change, relationships change, the law changes. And so like just revisiting whether you need to make changes so I usually tell my clients like every 2 to 5 years. I think that's what every attorney says. But yeah, I think it's reasonable to want to do that anyway. So yeah.
I feel like as a professional trustee, what you voiced today is I've never heard it before from an attorney, but it is the most, I think, equally important to the estate planning process, the documents that you're talking about, because when things go wrong, it's always because this stuff that you just talked about hasn't been worked with.
Mhm.
I've seen people torn apart over families torn apart. Nothing makes people go crazy like death and money, death and assets. When we put those two things together in a highly emotional state, things can just go so haywire if there's any ambiguities or if people have, ideas about how things should go and then it doesn't go that way. It's like seeing families torn apart over a car or a parrot or like whatever it is that they're arguing about, or where mom should go if, she becomes incapacitated and things like that. It's really heartbreaking because all this pain and suffering can last generations and
Mhm.
doesn't have to if, the communication is made up front. I've just never seen it really talked about in this depth, but it is important because the people on the other side it's gonna happen, these dynamics are going to happen, and the better prepared that you can be, the smoother it'll go.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I'm actually uh, this year the president of the Marin Estate Planning Council, and I had this mediator who I think is amazing and does a lot of work with families come and talk to all the attorneys and CPAs and financial people about kind of what I like what she does uh, in this process. And I was a little nervous about how that would sink in with the membership, but people were like, were you there?
They loved it.
People
Yeah.
were so engaged. I'm so excited that like people were really, like attorneys were really into it. So I hope that this is something that like the way we see how we do this changes.
And she gave an example of a family was parents had passed and they had a desk that every single one of the kids wanted. And so they had to go to mediation over it. And part of the thing with mediation is it's facilitating it, but it's also asking the right questions to help people get farther down the path. And she was like, there's no way these guys are ever gonna agree. This is gonna be a disaster. And she actually got them to a solution. They were each gonna take it for
Yeah, well, they got to the
Yeah,
solution.
they
That's
got
the powerful thing.
Yeah.
She, well, and this is the style of mediation that I really, really like, which is create a safe container, help them know how to have the conversation and do so in a way that is respectful of, and just, that honors their father. And they came up with a solution. And that I think is really powerful when they can solve the problem themselves with each other. I think that was really cool. So yeah, but yeah, you're so right. It doesn't matter how much money it is because money is a placeholder for other stuff. It's not like, I mean, money is great and money can be really helpful, but it's usually about something else too. And that's what makes, I think, it so toxic.
And the other thing is even the incapacitation can happen much faster than, people are good at faking it, right? My mom, I had gone to visit her before my wedding. I got married January 25th of 2020. And two stepkids, and I immediately got locked down in my house for a year and a half with them. But I had
Oh,
gone
yeah,
to but I had gone to see my mom right before we got married, and my mom came to my wedding. I had her cousin come out with her, and they both came together, and they had a good time. Went back home. I didn't get back to go see her until October of 21 because I just couldn't get there. And when I got there, I the last time I had been there, I had made her dinner and those big broccoli stalks with the head of broccoli on them. I bought like three of those and we had cooked one. And when I got back there, those broccoli stalks were still in the refrigerator. They were water. The stalks were still there, but everything else was just water. And so I immediately, and I had to put her in a nursing home by January of the next year. So it can happen a lot faster than you think it can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think a really big thing that we're seeing now, especially with the way technology is allowing people to get cheap estate plans online without the help of an attorney.
Yeah.
When you come in on my side of things, that's where I've seen the biggest messes and the biggest litigations, and we don't have a guide like Stacy to, give you the whole package of, not just the nuts and bolts of doing it legally correctly, but, the family dynamics portion of it. It's been really devastating for a lot of my clients.
Mhm.
Yeah. What is your name?
I came late, so I don't know what I missed them.
You missed some of it. It's okay.
Yeah.
We can send out the slide.
Yeah, we'll give you the slide deck. Absolutely.
And what's your name again?
I'm done.
Don.
Probably Dan.
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 Okay.
Yeah, so,
Thanks for coming. How'd you hear about it?
I went online and then it popped up with, well, it was one, forgot the name of this program that,
Next door?
next, no, it wasn't
Or no,
Next Door.
the patch.
Eventbrite.
Eventbrite, yeah, Eventbrite
Okay.
popped up and that's not right. I think
I'm always curious where people will find out about it.
before I known about you through my library, but I wasn't able to come last time. So, you mentioned something like, having a mediator at times, right? To kind of sort things out and,
Mhm.
yeah, so is that something that you work out with, the attorney,
So you can, so when I'm working with clients and we're in the estate planning process, we So the answer, short answer is no, you can hire a mediator without needing to go through an attorney. So I'm the one sometimes referring the mediator if I'm already working with a family to set up a plan, but if you just need help having a difficult conversation, not necessarily related to putting together an estate plan, you can contact a mediator directly and like Caitlin will kind of tailor how she works with you based on what your specific needs are. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to give referrals, and I can give you more than just her name too. Like so if that's something that you feel like you're looking for, I'm happy to.
Not quite yet.
Okay.
I'm just trying to learn as much as I can about this whole process.
Got it.
So,
Okay.
and the more I go into it, the more I have more questions, and so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more questions than
Yeah.
answers. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. My wife and I are trying to set up something, so, so
Okay.
that when we go on the kids, we'll have less problems
Yeah.
with whatever we have.
Yeah.
But, she seems to think back, oh, this is easy, you can just go online and do it, it's over and get it over with, so, but the more I read about this, I realize it's not that simple.
Yeah.
It's not that simple, so. I'm not kind of convinced that we have to get the services of an attorney and have things worked out.
Yeah.
As best as could be. Because I think that each situation is kind of like it's very unique, like a human fingerprint. Every family has its own set of issues. So
For sure.
yeah.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Well, I have a couple of slides. Are you interested in hearing a little bit about the market and how things are going? Anyone?
Switch.
Yeah.
What are they
Yeah,
gonna
we're
do? Say no?
Yeah. All right.
Sure.
It won't take long. I did this really quickly, or I didn't do it very quickly, but I just, just giving a quick market update of what's going on in the market. So 23 and 24 and even 25 were a little bit slow. So our market dropped by 20% in sales volume, 20% in 24, and then another 20% in 23, and then another 20% in 24, and then it came up a little bit in 25. The estimates are that it's gonna bounce back up a little bit more this year. And what we're seeing so far, and we'll send these out to you, but your average sales price is staying pretty solid. Actually, let me go to the next slide here. So this is your average price versus median price. And so, it's the average being, okay, it's the average of the sales, whereas a median is, okay, it's the same number of people on the high end or as it is on the low end. So the median is a little bit less reliable because it's mainly telling you what homes are selling. So if you're selling a lot of people in the high range, that median sales price is going to go up. If you're selling a lot of homes in the $1 million range, that'll go down. And you see that fluctuates as the year goes on. But then the inventory is, this only goes back to 23. It doesn't go back to 24. 24 was up higher up here. And you can see how it's been relatively flat for the last couple of years. But I'll tell you, October, November, December last year was particularly rough. And you can see the inventory just dropped off precipitously. But what we're seeing so far this year is I've written 5 offers in the last 6 weeks, and I've only got 1 into contract. I'm writing another offer tonight or tomorrow, and I believe we'll be able to negotiate that. But I'm losing out to competition. So what that means is the inventory is so low. Like I think we're only back. So the low was 58. I think we're only back up to 168. So we're back up to about, this level here. So we're not very high. And so the lesson is pretty houses on pretty streets in good neighborhoods are selling fast, and they're selling, I just heard a story about a house in Mill Valley. It was a well-priced house and it went way over, just because a house in Mill Valley is hard to find right now. So the news on the market, I think this is the only one I put on here. The news on the market is that the market is strong and it's coming back. The inventory is still super low, which is causing competition, and competition drives the prices up. So, I always tell people, look, there's never really there's worse times in the market to sell and better times in the market. We're coming into a better time in the market. But I also tell people, look, my crystal ball broke the first year in the business. So, and there's a lot of things going on in the environment and politically. So I don't know how long that's going to last. But, Marin is definitely, like, when you're hearing statistics about the whole United States, really don't pay it. Like either call or call your realtor or just look at local stuff, because the Marin market is very different than it is in the rest of the United States. It's very different, much more stable here. And so the story behind the inventory and why we're seeing things starting to get multiple offers again is AI. The spending on AI is astronomical. So I saw an article the other day. It was saying that the telephone boom, right? So Pac Bell, all that. The telephone boom was about 200 billion, adjusted for inflation. The AI boom is $700 billion. And so what happened is, as the AI started coming into San Francisco, San Francisco is the hub of the whole Bay Area. So San Francisco starts to light up the inventory, things start selling, they get higher prices. Then people decide, okay, I can't afford the city, I'm going to move a little bit farther out. So then they started looking in like Southern Marin, Mill Valley, Corte Madera, Larkspur, Tiburon. Now it's far enough along that we're actually seeing it trickle up into San Rafael, a little bit up into Novato because of that. It's the wealth effect, right? So when the money starts flowing, it flows in the major hub, and then it flows out to the rest of the markets. So in San Francisco, I sold in San Francisco for 10 years before I moved over here. And condos were always the lagging, or the leading inventory or leading indicator going into a down spell, and they were always the lagging coming back out. And so I consider Marin County kind of the condos of San Francisco, right? So we go down before San Francisco goes down. And then when San Francisco comes up, we come up after them. So that's kind of your market update.
Two questions.
Yeah.
So I heard this thing on the radio when I was driving like 2 days ago, and they were talking about this. And they were saying that actually, like, one of the things that may be different this time is that a lot of these companies, these tech companies that are employing employees are wanting them to be really close, are
Mhm.
wanting them to stay in
Yeah.
San Francisco
Yeah.
and be super close, and
Yeah.
that might actually impact whether or not people, when they have families, move.
Absolutely. So I'll point out three things. So one of the things, we're still actually on a downside. So when COVID hit, everyone wanted to move out of the city. Everyone moved to rent, everyone moved, right? So you had this really bulk of sales in 20 and 21. That's why 22 was okay, 23, 24, and 25 were relatively flat, because everyone moved back here, right? Well, the other thing that people are saying is, well, and this, I mean, people are talking about a housing recession. We're not going to have a housing recession like we had in 2008. And I was in it, right? So I started in 2003. In 2008, if you could put a mirror under your nose and you could fog it up, they would give you a loan. It was crazy. But I don't have the slides here, but the average FICO score for people who own now is like 760 or something. It's high. The amount of equity that people have in their houses is at an all-time high. So even if we have I think more likely, if there's going to be a housing slump, it's going to be in the rest of the country. I don't think it's necessarily going to affect here as much as it would. We might get a little bit of a dip because we got a little bit of a dip after COVID, right? But you're not going to see the big foreclosures they're right at like 4% of the market, right? They're right where they usually are. So, and typically right now, I just had an agent who sold a house that was in foreclosure, but the woman had some health issues. She was in the hospital and she literally was losing her house, and he was able to get it sold for her. So if the house had foreclosed, she would have gotten zero. And because he got in there, got it sold, she got $300,000. So, but a lot of times what happens is as it goes into pre-foreclosure, people, they find the money, they borrow the money, and they just pay themselves up. So it's not, a lot of times they don't even go to foreclosure. It's a non-issue here. So, yeah.
So what's your thought, when I first bought my house, the interest rate was 7.5%.
Mhm.
And then, from that point, it went up to 15%.
Mhm.
But today, people are screaming because the interest rate is 6%.
Yeah.
So I know housing proportionally is, to income is much different, than 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, what I think is that, interest rates, so a couple things. One, I think part of the reason in 22, 23, and 24, it was down was because the rates were up. And here's what happens when rate goes up, right? When rates go up, everyone's like, oh, great, I'm gonna get a deal on my house. Right? And so that didn't happen. In Marin County, San Francisco, they didn't really go down. And so what happened was it took about a year for that to settle in and people kind of get used to the new rates before they started buying. They had to save more money. They had to do what they needed to do to get in. I think at this point, I'm not super optimistic that I listened to like 4 different economists, and some of them are they don't think the rates are going to go down a whole lot more, and others think it'll go down maybe another 20, 30 basis points. So right now you can get a loan at about 6.25. They're thinking to go down to 5.75, which is not significant. When these people, so you've got a whole bubble of people that are mortgaged at their house at 2.9%. And I'm just telling you right now, my advice to those people is never sell that house. If you can figure out how to keep that house and rent it out, like that's free money,
Yes.
right? Because it's right at inflation numbers, right? And so you've got this big bubble of people who are kind of locked in their house because they've got a great rate and they're not going anywhere. You've got another bunch of people who are locked in their house because they've lived in their house a long time. And one of two things happens is the first thing that happens is their house went up significantly in value. And if they were to sell, they would have to pay a ton of capital gains, and people don't like to do that. So I probably have 20 people on my list of people that I contact all the time, and they're like, I'm not selling because I'd have to pay the capital gains. But the other thing that's even more important is they can't find they want to stay in Marin. They don't want to leave their town. And so, finding a condo in Marin County is hard. Finding a single level condo that doesn't have outrageous HOA dues, it's hard. And so you've got those two people on those extremes that are not selling. They're here and they're gonna stay until they, I tell people I'm gonna go out here in a body bag, right? And so that's kind of the extreme. So, but you've got this middle that, people, the 3 Ds, right, are, death, divorce, and diapers. So if somebody's having a baby, they're probably going to buy a new house. If they're getting divorced, they're probably going to have to do something. And then, I work with estates and trusts and help people through that process as well. So. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't think interest rates are going to come down significantly, but I do think that because of the low inventory, you're still going to see upward pressure on the houses. Yeah.
All right,
Good question. Any other questions?
it's time to go.
Yeah, I like to respect people's time. So let's get out of here.
Thank you.
If you have
guys
more
so much for
questions,
coming.
you can ask.
Yeah.
Do you have your card?
Well, I don't. What can I do?
How do I lock out of this?
So my situation is, I need to update
Mhm.